Cold Creek, Montana, a small town nestled among the majestic Rocky Mountains. Here, time seems to move slower than the outside world. It's often said that Cold Creek is a peaceful place, where everyone knows each other and every secret is buried beneath the thick snow of each winter. But behind that idyllic facade, Cold Creek harbors ghosts of the past and dark secrets that no one wants to unearth. In 1998, Cold Creek was plunged into a horrific murder case, an indelible stain. John Smith, the owner of the town's only grocery store, was brutally murdered in his office. The case shocked the entire town, and despite the police's best efforts, the perpetrator remained at large, sowing fear and suspicion in the hearts of every resident. 20 years later, a young detective named Sarah Walker is assigned to Cold Creek to reinvestigate the John Smith case. Sarah is a strong and determined woman with a haunting past. She believes that every case can be solved, and she is determined to find the truth no matter how painful it may be. But Sarah has no idea that Cold Creek doesn't want its secrets revealed. This town has its own rules, and the people here will do anything to protect what they consider to be theirs. As Sarah gets closer to the truth, she realizes that she is facing a force far darker than she imagined. The Siren Song of Cold Creek. February 14th, 1998. The scream of a police siren clawed its way through the biting stillness of Cold Creek, Montana. The sound, raw and urgent, bounced off the snow-laden peaks of the Rockies, echoing through the small town like a mournful lament. On this night, the picture postcard serenity that defined Cold Creek was shattered, its tranquility replaced by a dread that settled like frost on the skin. 10 below zero, the thermometer read, a promise of a long, unforgiving winter. Both outside and, as it turned out, within the town itself. Flashing red and blue lights painted stark, frantic patterns across the snow-covered Main Street, illuminating the quaint clapboard buildings with an unsettling strobe. All eyes were drawn to Smith's General Store, a beacon of warmth and community for over 70 years. Tonight, however, the familiar glow was replaced by an unnatural pallor, the cheerful atmosphere supplanted by a palpable tension that crackled in the frigid air. The scent of pine cleaner, usually comforting, was now tainted by something metallic and acrid. Sheriff Hank Thompson, a man whose face was a roadmap of hard-won experience and weathered stoicism, stood just outside the police tape, his breath misting in the icy air. He watched as paramedics hurried inside, their faces grim. Thompson knew without being told that they wouldn't be needed. He'd seen enough in his years as sheriff to recognize the grim tableau unfolding inside. Small towns like Cold Creek prided themselves on their quiet lives, but they were also pressure cookers where secrets festered and grudges simmered. He'd always suspected something dark lay beneath the surface of Cold Creek, a hidden current of resentment and regret. Tonight that current had broken free. He pushed past a young deputy, Dale Jenkins, who looked as green as the pine trees surrounding the town. "Jenkins," Thompson barked, "secure the perimeter. Nobody in, nobody out. And try not to throw up on the snow. Makes a bad impression." Thompson ducked under the yellow tape and entered the store. The familiar scent of coffee beans and canned goods usually greeted him, but tonight it was overpowered by the cloying smell of blood. He found John Smith sprawled on the floor of his small, cluttered office, a crimson stain blooming on his flannel shirt. His eyes were wide and unseeing, fixed on the flickering fluorescent light above. Thompson knelt beside the body, his gaze sweeping the room. It was a mess. Papers scattered, drawers pulled open, a cash box lying on its side, its contents strewn across the floor. A robbery gone wrong? Maybe, but something felt off. The violence seemed too personal. Thompson's gut, honed by years of experience, was screaming at him. This wasn't just some random act of desperation. This was something else, something deeper, something rooted in the dark soil of Cold Creek's past. 20 years later, the tires of Sarah Walker's rental car crunched on the gravel as she pulled up to the weathered sign that read, "Welcome to Cold Creek." The town seemed to hold its breath under the weight of the Montana sky. It was a far cry from the bustling streets of Chicago she was used to. Sarah, a detective with the Chicago PD, took a deep breath of the crisp mountain air. Cold Creek was a world away from everything she knew, but she was here on a mission. A cold case, the unsolved murder of John Smith. The file had landed on her desk seemingly at random, a dusty relic from a forgotten time. She got out of the car and a gust of wind whipped around her, carrying the scent of pine and snow. She pulled her coat tighter, feeling a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't just the cold. There was something else in the air, something unsettling. She looked out at the town, at the quaint buildings huddled together against the mountains. Cold Creek, peaceful, quaint, and hiding a secret she was about to unearth. The siren song of a forgotten past had called her here, and Sarah Walker was ready to answer. She just didn't know what price she would have to pay. Echoes in the archives, shadows in the present. The Cold Creek County Courthouse was a relic of a bygone era, its imposing facade hinting at the weight of history contained within. Sarah Walker, still feeling the chill of the Montana wind on her skin, stepped inside, the scent of aged paper and dust filling her nostrils. She found the county archives tucked away in the basement, a dimly lit, cavernous room lined with towering shelves stacked high with records. The air was thick with the whispers of forgotten stories, the echoes of lives lived and lost. Mrs. Peterson, the elderly county clerk, greeted Sarah with a wary smile. "Chicago PD, huh? We don't get many big city detectives around here." "Just looking for some old files," Sarah said, flashing her badge. "The John Smith murder case from '98. Mrs. Peterson sighed. "That was a long time ago. Poor John, a good man taken too soon. Sheriff Thompson never did figure out who did it." "I'm hoping to change that," Sarah said, her voice firm. Mrs. Peterson led her to a section marked Unsolved Cases. The file on John Smith was thin, containing mostly crime scene photos, witness statements, and Sheriff Thompson's notes. Sarah spent hours poring over the documents, meticulously examining every detail. The crime scene photos were stark and disturbing. John Smith's lifeless body, the ransacked office, the bloodstains on the floor. The witness statements were mostly mundane, filled with accounts of John's friendly demeanor and hard-working nature. But it was Sheriff Thompson's notes that caught her attention. He seemed fixated on Mary Smith, John's widow. He noted her strange behavior, her inconsistent statements, and the fact that she had a hidden past. "Elizabeth Carter," Sarah murmured, reading Thompson's notes aloud. "Changed her name, reinvented herself. Why?" She decided to delve deeper into Elizabeth Carter's past. She asked Mrs. Peterson to pull up any records related to the Carter family. Carter? Let's see, Mrs. Peterson said, shuffling through the files. There was an Elizabeth Carter who went to Cold Creek High School back in the 70s. Dropped out suddenly, never heard from her again. Sarah felt a surge of excitement. This could be it, the key to unlocking the mystery. Mrs. Peterson pulled up Elizabeth Carter's high school transcript and a faded yearbook. Sarah stared at the photo of the young Elizabeth Carter. Her eyes were filled with a fire, a defiance that was both captivating and unsettling. What happened to her? Sarah asked. Why did she drop out of school? Mrs. Peterson shrugged. Nobody knows. She just disappeared one day. Some folks said she ran off with a traveling salesman. Others said she got pregnant. Nobody ever found out the truth. Sarah spent the rest of the day piecing together Elizabeth Carter's life. She learned that Elizabeth had been a bright, popular student. She excelled in English and history, and she dreamed of becoming a writer. But her life had taken a dramatic turn, leading her down a dark and twisted path. As Sarah left the courthouse, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the snow-covered streets. She felt a sense of unease, a feeling that she was being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, but she didn't see anyone. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a trap. Meanwhile, 20 years earlier, Sheriff Hank Thompson sat across from Mary Smith in the interrogation room, the air thick with tension. He had just confronted her with the truth about her past, about Elizabeth Carter. "Why, Mary?" Thompson asked, his voice low. "Why did you change your name? Why did you come back to Cold Creek?" Mary remained silent, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. "We know you're hiding something, Mary," Thompson pressed. "Tell us the truth. What happened between you and John Smith?" Mary finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "He ruined my life," she said. "He took everything from me." Thompson leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "Tell me about it, Mary," he said. "Tell me everything." The echoes of the past were about to collide with the shadows of the present, and Sarah Walker was about to find herself caught in the crossfire. The tavern's tale and a sheriff's regret. Sarah Walker walked into the Cold Creek Tavern, the scent of stale beer and fried food hitting her like a wall. The dimly lit bar was a haven for locals, their faces etched with the weariness of small-town life. She needed to get a feel for the town, to hear the whispers and rumors that might hold the key to the Smith case. The bartender, a burly man with a handlebar mustache, eyed her with suspicion. "You new in town?" "Just passing through," Sarah said, flashing a friendly smile. "Looking for a good story." "Cold Creek ain't got no stories," the bartender grunted. "Just hard work and long winters." "I heard about John Smith," Sarah said casually. "The guy who was murdered back in '98. The bartender's eyes narrowed. "That was a long time ago. Best let sleeping dogs lie." "I'm just curious," Sarah said. "What was he like?" The bartender hesitated, then poured her a glass of beer. "John was a good guy. Always had a smile on his face, hard worker. Didn't deserve what happened to him." "What about his wife, Mary?" Sarah asked. The bartender's expression darkened. "Mary was different, kept to herself, never really fit in around here." "Did she have any enemies?" Sarah pressed. "Everybody has enemies," the bartender said cryptically. "Especially in a small town like this." Sarah spent the evening talking to the locals, listening to their stories about John and Mary Smith. She learned that John had been well-liked and respected, while Mary had always been an outsider. Some people said she was cold and aloof, while others said she was simply misunderstood. One name kept coming up in the conversations: Sarah Miller, the waitress who had been having an affair with John Smith. Sarah decided to pay her a visit. Meanwhile, 20 years earlier, Sheriff Hank Thompson sat across from Sarah Miller in the Cold Creek Tavern, the same tavern that Sarah Walker was now sitting in. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and the murmur of conversations. "Sarah, I need you to be honest with me," Thompson said, his voice serious. "What was going on between you and John Smith?" Sarah Miller hesitated, then sighed. "John and I were seeing each other. It wasn't a secret." "How long were you having an affair?" Thompson asked. "About 6 months," Sarah said. "It started out as a fling, but it got complicated." "Complicated how?" "John was married, Sheriff," Sarah said, her voice laced with bitterness. "He promised me he was going to leave Mary for me. He said he loved me, but then a few weeks ago he started to pull away." "Did he say why?" Thompson asked. "He said he couldn't do it. He said he owed Mary too much," Sarah said. Thompson frowned. "Owed her what?" "I don't know," Sarah said. "He wouldn't tell me. He just said he couldn't abandon her." Thompson studied Sarah Miller's face, trying to gauge her sincerity. He couldn't tell if she was telling the truth or if she was holding something back. "Where were you the night John was murdered?" Thompson asked. "I was here working," Sarah said. "I can ask some of the other patrons to vouch for me." Thompson knew she had an alibi, but he still couldn't shake the feeling that she was involved somehow. As Thompson left the tavern, he felt a sense of regret. He had a feeling that he was missing something, that he was overlooking a crucial piece of evidence. But he couldn't put his finger on it. He looked up at the night sky, at the stars twinkling in the vast expanse of the Montana wilderness. He wondered if he would ever solve the mystery of John Smith's murder. He hoped, for the sake of Cold Creek, that he would. But as the years passed, the case grew colder and colder until it was just another unsolved file gathering dust in the county archives. Until now. Sarah Walker finished her beer and left the tavern, the faces of the locals blurring in her memory. She knew she was getting closer to the truth, but she also knew that she was walking into a dangerous situation. The shadows of the past were lengthening, and she was determined to unearth the secrets that lay buried beneath the snow-covered streets of Cold Creek. She knew that time was running out, and that the truth, like the harsh Montana winter, could be unforgiving. A meeting by the river and a photograph from the past. The next morning, Sarah Walker drove to the outskirts of Cold Creek to the small, weather-beaten house where Sarah Miller lived. The house was nestled beside the Cold Creek River, the rushing water a constant murmuring presence. Sarah Miller answered the door, her eyes wary. She was older now. Her youthful beauty faded, but there was still a spark of intelligence in her gaze. "Detective Walker, right?" Sarah Miller said, her voice hesitant. "I was expecting you." "I'm just trying to understand what happened back in '98, Sarah Walker said. "I know you were close to John Smith." Sarah Miller sighed and invited her inside. The house was small and cluttered, filled with mementos of a life lived in quiet solitude. "John was a good man," Sarah Miller said, her voice tinged with sadness. He didn't deserve what happened to him. What was your relationship with him? Sarah Walker asked. Sarah Miller hesitated, then said, "We were having an affair. It was a mistake. I regret it." Did Mary Smith know about the affair? Sarah Walker asked. I don't know, Sarah Miller said, and John said he was going to leave her for me, but he never did. He said he owed her too much. Owed her for what? Sarah Walker pressed. I never found out, Sarah Miller said. He wouldn't tell me. It was something from their past, something that haunted him. Sarah Walker studied Sarah Miller's face, trying to discern the truth. She believed that Sarah Miller was telling her everything she knew, but she also sensed that she was holding something back. Did you see John the night he was murdered? Sarah Walker asked. No, Sarah Miller said. I was working at the tavern. I have an alibi. I know, Sarah Walker said. But did you see anyone suspicious that night? Anyone who might have wanted to hurt John? Sarah Miller thought for a moment, then said, There was a stranger in town that week. A man with a dark look in his eyes. He kept asking questions about John Smith. Did you get his name? Sarah Walker asked. No, Sarah Miller said. He just disappeared after the murder. I never saw him again. Sarah Walker thanked Sarah Miller for her time and left the house, her mind racing. The stranger in town. Who was he? And what did he have to do with John Smith's murder? Back at her motel room, Sarah Walker spread out the crime scene photos and witness statements. She stared at the photo of John Smith's lifeless body, trying to find a clue, something she had missed before. Suddenly, her eyes landed on a photograph in John Smith's office. It was a photo of John and Mary Smith when they were young, standing beside a river. But it wasn't the river in Cold Creek. It was a different river, a river she had never seen before. She took a closer look at the background of the photo. She recognized the distinctive rock formations and the unique vegetation. She pulled out her laptop and started searching for information about rivers in Montana. After hours of research, she found it. The river in the photograph was the Blackfoot River, located hundreds of miles from Cold Creek. What were John and Mary Smith doing at the Blackfoot River? And why did they keep a photo of it hidden in their office? Meanwhile, 20 years earlier, Sheriff Hank Thompson sat at his desk staring at the photograph of John and Mary Smith by the Blackfoot River. He had found the photo in their house, hidden in a shoebox beneath their bed. He didn't know what the photo meant, but he knew it was important. He decided to drive to the Blackfoot River and see if he could find any clues. As he drove, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He glanced in his rearview mirror, but he didn't see anyone. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was in danger. He knew that the truth about John Smith's murder was buried deep within the past, and he was determined to unearth it no matter the cost. The photograph was a key. He had to unlock the story the photograph was telling. What secrets were buried by the Blackfoot River? The secrets of the past were about to be revealed, and Sarah Walker and Hank Thompson were both on a collision course with the truth. The Blackfoot River would be the next step, but were they ready for what they would find there? Blackfoot River whispers and a confrontation by the creek. Sarah Walker, fueled by caffeine and a growing sense of urgency, made the long drive from Cold Creek to the Blackfoot River. The landscape shifted dramatically, the rugged peaks giving way to rolling hills and dense forests. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. As she drove, she called Sheriff Thompson's old number, hoping against hope someone might answer. It went straight to voicemail. She arrived at the Blackfoot River late in the afternoon. The river was wide and swift-flowing, its waters a deep emerald green. The landscape was breathtaking, but there was also a sense of isolation, a feeling that she was far from civilization. She parked her car and walked along the riverbank, her eyes scanning the terrain. She was looking for anything that might connect John and Mary Smith to this place. A landmark, a hidden trail, anything that might provide a clue. She found a weathered wooden sign marking a historical site, the Carter homestead, established 1880. The Carter name sparked a jolt of recognition. Elizabeth Carter. She followed a narrow path leading away from the river deeper into the woods. The path was overgrown and treacherous, but she pressed on, driven by a relentless curiosity. She emerged into a clearing where she found the ruins of an old farmhouse. The house was dilapidated and overgrown with weeds, its windows shattered, its roof caved in. It was a desolate, haunting place. She walked through the ruins, her footsteps crunching on broken glass and decaying wood. She found fragments of furniture, tattered pieces of clothing, and a few old photographs. One photograph caught her eye. It was a picture of a young couple standing in front of the farmhouse. The man was tall and handsome with a confident smile. The woman was beautiful with a spark of mischief in her eyes. Sarah recognized them immediately. It was John Smith and Elizabeth Carter years before they came to Cold Creek. She turned the photo over and saw a handwritten inscription on the back. John and Elizabeth forever. Blackfoot River, 1972. A wave of realization washed over her. This was where it all began. This was where John and Elizabeth fell in love, where they built their dreams. And this was where those dreams came crashing down. Suddenly she heard a noise behind her. She turned around and saw a figure standing in the shadows of the trees. It was Mary Smith. "What are you doing here?" Sarah Walker asked, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. "I came to stop you," Mary Smith said, her voice cold and determined. "You're digging up things that should stay buried." Meanwhile, 20 years earlier, Sheriff Hank Thompson followed the same winding road to the Blackfoot River, a storm brewing both in the sky and in his gut. He pulled up to the Carter homestead and found the old farmhouse in a state of disrepair, just as Sarah Walker would find it years later. He wandered through the ruins, a sense of foreboding washing over him. He found a discarded letter, torn and faded, but still legible. It was addressed to Elizabeth Carter. The letter spoke of a betrayal, a broken promise, and a desperate plea for forgiveness. It was signed simply, John. Thompson realized that the letter was written by John Smith, confessing to something he had done to Elizabeth Carter. He knew that this was the key to understanding their troubled relationship. As he turned to leave, he heard a noise behind him. He spun around, his hand reaching for his gun. It was Mary Smith. She hadn't followed him exactly. She had been waiting for him. "What are you doing here, Mary?" Thompson asked, his voice wary. Mary's eyes were filled with a chilling calm. "I'm here to protect my secrets," she said. She raised her gun and aimed it at Thompson, a grim determination settling on her face. Back in the present, Sarah Walker stared at Mary Smith, the Blackfoot River whispering secrets all around them. Two timelines were about to collide. The past and the present would finally reveal their truth. The storm that brewed years ago at the Blackfoot River was about to unleash its vengeance. "It's over, Mary," Sarah Walker said, her voice steady. "The truth is out. You can't hide anymore." The question was, who would survive this confrontation by the creek? And what secrets would be washed away by the Blackfoot River's relentless flow? The answers were about to surface, brought to light by the echoes of the past.